Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for making your way to Texas Public Radio and spending your evening with us tonight on this very hot day in San Antonio. Welcome to the Great Essay Panel. Like Ruben said, I'm Marian Navarro. I'm a producer here at Texas Public Radio. I work for Morning Edition and Fronteras. And we have a lovely panel today to talk about Asian American cuisine and the influence in South Texas. And this is actually part of the Great Essay series that we have here at Texas Public Radio in collaboration with the City of San Antonio World Heritage Office, and also made possible with the sponsorship by HEB and Frost. And this is actually the first in our second series. We've highlighted a bunch of different cuisines in the past. We kicked it off with Tex-Mex. We then went to Black and soul food, Polish and Native American, and then to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month this month, we are kicking it off with Great Essay and Asian American influence in South Texas. Again, special thanks to Frost, HEB, and the City of San Antonio World Heritage Office, and then also a big thanks to Ming's Things, who are our business supporters. They are the ones supplying us with the delicious food that we have this evening. They had beef salad, summer noodles, and also mango sago, and they'll be selling until they sell out this evening. So make sure that you have a chance to go and buy and support Ming's Things here at outside in the studio. So to get us started today, I'm actually going to have the panelists introduce themselves and give a little bit about themselves. So we'll start with Monica right here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Monica Perales, and I am the Associate Vice Provost at UTSA's Institute of Texan Cultures, and I'm also a historian, and among the areas of interest that I have are Texas history and food history.
Hey guys, my name is Leo Davila. I'm born and raised San Antonio. I have a restaurant, Sticks and Stone. We're in Leon Valley. We focus on fusion without being confusion. I grew up half Chinese and Mexican, so the food isn't something you go and see and say like, oh, give me carne guisada and an egg roll, or give me something else. Not saying it wouldn't be delicious, but it's really just food that I saw growing up, and I just wanted to reimagine it and just tell my story through food.
Hi there, my name is Kristina Zhao, and I am a first-generation immigrant. I came over to San Antonio with my parents back in 1990, and I have two restaurants in town, Szechuan House, which opened in 2015, and Dashi, Szechuan Kitchen and Bar, which opened in 2021. And at those both places, we focus on food from the Szechuan region. In Chinese cuisine, we have 8 formally recognized culinary styles, Szechuan being one of those 8. And happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Camille?
Hi, my name is Camille de los Reyes. I'm the owner of Sari Sari Filipino Restaurant, Market, and Bakery, also out in Leon Valley. Our business was started by my parents back in 1995, so we're reaching 30 years next year, I believe. So I started back in 2016. I'm a first-generation Filipino-American born here in the States. So our goal has really been to take what my parents have started, honor their traditions and their sacrifices, and help tell our story and our culture through our food at our restaurant. We also do a lot in the community to make sure that we are also educating everyone about our culture at different festivals. And I hope to see you guys out at one of those or in our restaurant. So thank you so much.
Big round of applause for all of you. So to get us started for tonight, lots to talk about, lots to highlight for tonight. But Monica, I would like to start with you. So I want to start off with the historical perspective of how Asian American food came to South Texas and San Antonio and how Asian American immigrants got here. So tell us a little bit about that story and how it's evolved to what it is today.
Sure. I think one of the most important things to know and to understand about sort of the cuisine and sort of the history of Texas is to think about Texas as a crossroads. And it is a place that not just today is a crossroads, but has been a crossroads across generations, even before this was Texas, the state of Texas, right? So thinking about Asian people from around the whole continent and from the Pacific Rim, whose sort of experience has been, sort of in this region, right? Even in colonial times, when we think of this area and New Spain, right? There were Asian influences and Asian people from across, the continent who made their way here. People of Asian background have long histories in the region. Like, think about Chinese immigrants who came to work on the railroads in the mid-19th century. In the early part of the 20th century, Japanese farmers and merchants who came to set up their lives here as well. And well into the 20th century, with the migration of different waves from different parts of Asia, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam in the 1970s especially. And so it's a long and diverse history of people who have come through Texas because of where Texas is and because of that context. And so these roots are incredibly long and varied. And even the ingredients, when we think about ingredients that are, of this area, of this region, many of them also followed these various routes, through the Americas and up into Texas. And so I think it's important to recognize that. I think another, element that is also important is thinking about all of the different ways that people from various Asian backgrounds have had an influence on the culinary traditions of this region in different ways, as entrepreneurs, as makers of food, as cooks, as business owners, as grocers, as growers, right? The Japanese rice farmers and other farmers in kind of the South Texas region. And so, when we think about Asian cuisine, it's almost a part of the DNA of Texas, if you will, because those roots are so long.
When you think of San Antonio and South Texas, you automatically think Texas-Mexico borderlands, right? That idea that we're right next to the border. But it's also important to highlight the fact that so many immigrants crossed that border to get here, and that Asian American immigrants crossed that border. And so those influences are here in Texas. Camille, you had something very interesting about Filipino history and kind of how you've learned about that and the food and how it influenced you here.
For sure. Our immigration story happened also back in the 80s. There was an influx of nurses that came to the U.S. and also to Texas, and that's how my mom got here. So you'll find a lot of nurses in that same kind of hospitality industry, caring for people and really taking care of our people and anyone else that we encounter with. We really try to make everybody family. But with that story, I also learned in my research, and I feel like it's really important to know where you're going. You have to know where you came from. So I had to dive a little bit deeper back into our roots, my parents, how they got here and where we came from in the Philippines. And I learned that Texas was actually called Nuevas Filipinas during the time that Spain had colonized the Philippines and Mexico. Texas, or close to that, Acapulco, was a major trade route. So from Mexico, we got avocados and corn. We make desserts out of those. We don't make guacamole. So you have to try them. In the Asian, avocados are different in Asia, but also very delicious. So there's a lot of, and then Mexico got mangoes. We have Filipino mangoes that come from Mexico because of that trade. So I think there's a lot of Filipino roots here in Texas. I think there's a lot of similarities in our food, also in our language. So if you haven't tried it, definitely come out and see and explore with me how pancit is like fideo, or how lechon kawali is like chicharron. But lots of really delicious things. And like Leo said, there's a lot of ways that we can fuse our cultures and our cuisines to make them more approachable and also to make them more understandable.
I think that's something that obviously you see in your cuisine and the food that you serve at your restaurant, Leo. Like you said, you have Taiwanese beef rolls, you also have Korean japchae, but then you have big red barbacoa tacos as well as an offering. So tell us a little bit about that fusion and how you've used those ingredients and mixed them and used them.
Yeah, definitely. Growing up, we always had that joke where I wasn't Chinese enough, I wasn't Mexican enough, even though I grew up in South Texas. So now, as a chef, I experience the same things. Well, it's not Chinese enough or Asian enough, and it's not Mexican enough. And my thing is always, well, it's me enough. Like it's me. It's what I'm serving. And when people say, well, I've never seen this on another menu, correct, because it's me. Just like other chefs, there's stuff on other chefs' menu at their restaurants that I've never seen before on other people's menu. And it's to say, well, because they're an entity versus me being a person, it's different because there's no name attached to that. So it's very different to go through that struggle and to see that. But our food is pretty much just a storytelling of myself and my team. So, I have my whole family on this side, plus my team. And without them, I wouldn't be here today. And it's not just like a hoorah. Like, they really are who make me. And it's not fair to mention my name and not mention their name. So just my team that's here right now is Chef Kendra sitting up here with her dad. Also happens to be my girlfriend, so, love her to death. Then my front of the house manager is actually my little sister, Michelle. And then her husband, who's actually one of my best friends, is Chef Hunter, and he's my chef de cuisine. And with those four minds, we come together with this menu that serves us. So Kendra grew up Korean, grew up in Japan, has a lot of influence on that menu. Chef Hunter is from New Mexico, so we take his inspiration and his draw and we put in there. And then we just take what I saw. So Big Red and Barbacoa, probably our most controversial and loved taco on the menu. So, yeah, and that's what I would think. But you have so many people that look at me like, why would you do that? And I said, why wouldn't you do that? Right? You have it on the side. Let's mix it together. So we actually do take Big Red, put it in our heirloom masa, make a tortilla. From there to low and slow barbacoa, gets a chili de árbol salsa, a little bit of a pesto, kind of like an homage to where we used to work and some other things that we used to do. Give it a little bit of creaminess and texture. Queso fresco, and then pickle watermelon rind. And the reason that's there is like, that's my childhood in a taco. So on Sundays, you went to church, my grandpa made barbacoa, always had corn tortillas, always had a watermelon. So we're just trying to figure out a way to give you something that you've probably seen all your life, but not. And that's just kind of what we do every single day, and it's a blast.
What about you, Kristina? How has your restaurant used those ingredients and used your experiences, and how has it grown?
So the roots of our restaurants are actually, my story is very similar to Camille's, where my father is the one who started the Asia market back in 1997. So we're only a couple years behind you. And on that note, we all are connected. Like, before we met in the culinary world, my father shared a shopping center with her parents' market back from, I think, 2002 all the way until 2014. And then I went to high school with Leo's cousin, and we've been longtime friends. And so just side note on that, but our origins come from the Asia market, which was able to provide us with so many different unique ingredients that we were not able to source otherwise. And the origins of Szechuan House was really with my father and wanting to bring those flavors to San Antonio, and he wasn't able to find those back then. And we spent a lot of time talking to our guests and telling them about our style of food, about how it's enjoyed family style. And Szechuan food is known for being very spicy, but it actually it's known for 27 different flavor profiles, and there's maybe more than 5,000 different recipes in the repertoire. But at the fundamental, I think it's very similar to global cuisine, where you have the fundamental flavors of salty, sweet, bitter, spicy, sour, pungent, and then from those basic flavors, you have so many other levels that can come out of those. And then what we use to achieve those individual flavors depends on the ingredients that are available. So instead of, we don't use a lot of white vinegar, we use black vinegar, but you still get that acid component. And a lot of the food it's all about the balance of those flavors and how you can enjoy them.
And I think that's something, Monica, that you see throughout history, right? That the ingredients and the way that they're used changed based on what's available and what's there and what you can get, right?
Absolutely. And I think that one of the common threads here is, sort of how, individual groups try to carry on tradition and to provide things that are familiar and that speak to their experience and their place that they consider home as they're making home in a new place, and also what happens when people live alongside one another, when they work alongside one another, when they shop alongside one another and worship alongside one another, and how those influences and new ingredients and experiences kind of impact that, right? That you can get new creations and new ways of eating that speak to this moment in which people find themselves. And, I think you see that as a very familiar story across many immigrant groups, right? Trying to serve their community and give a taste and a feel of home while also making something that is unique to the time and space that they find themselves in.
Absolutely. And Kristina, I love that you brought up that, Szechuan cuisine has those basic flavor profiles, the heat, the acid, the spice, the sweet. And that's something that you can see across any cuisine, right? And so I think that cuisines or any type of ethnic cuisine really has so much similarities. And even though there's different histories and there's different backgrounds and different stories to it, it really is like a mix, right? Where you see all these different intersections of spice, acid, heat come together in your food, right?
Yes, and then to add on to that, I mean, food beyond the cuisine and what you taste, it's a language of its own. It's a love language. It's how we show that we care about you. And, back in the day when you don't have many resources, when you share food with someone, that's opening up your doors. That's putting forth your best. And of course, you want to visit the person who has the best tasting food, right? But coming together at the breakfast table or lunch table, dinner table, that was the one time that we had together as a family. And no matter how late that was or how early that was that one moment. And then that's also how, at least that's how I know that I'm currently being loved. If I'm busy, it's a love language. Yeah. And everybody has to eat. We all come together. I mean, it's a universal language too. We all need it for sustenance, and it's a lot more fun when you enjoy it with other people. I mean, it for the Chinese folk, the Szechuan folk, hot pot is probably the biggest thing. People can hot pot every single day, and they just go around. It's this big boiling cauldron in the middle, and you make your own dipping sauces, and you have lots of different things, and you just boil it. It's a very simple boil, but it brings people together. It brings the community together, and they literally can do it every single day.
And it's something too that for someone who might not be familiar, for someone who goes into a restaurant and expects to have, individual items on the menu, to be able to explain this is family style, or this is the way that I highlight my culture with that Tex-Mex Asian influence in the middle. So you're sharing your own story, right, with the people that come to your restaurants and that eat your food.
Absolutely. I think Leo and Camille do the same, and bringing community together.
And kind of talking about ethnic cuisine, any ethnic cuisine that you talk about, you see this with Tex-Mex, really anything. There's this idea of quote unquote authenticity. What is it to be authentic Szechuan, or what is it to be authentic Filipino food? Is it authentic Filipino food? What is authenticity, right? It's very subjective. It's a very broad window. How do you all approach that in your restaurants? Do you approach it in your restaurants? And how have you kind of worked through that idea of authenticity?
Who wants to? Okay.
I'll go first. So we actually have shirts made that say always authentic, never traditional, right? We are unapologetically ourselves, just like everyone should be, right? Don't be that person, but be you to who you are and stay true to that. And that's who we are, and that's what we do. So when we get questions asked, well, is it authentic, or this isn't authentic? And I'm like, how? Like, how is that not authentic? If I'm cooking it, if it came from me, if it came from my brain, my heart, my team's brain, my team's heart, where does authenticity start and end? Now, if you're telling me is it traditional, no. And I'll give you a story. I just went to Shendi, China. So I'm also an UNESCO chef ambassador. Hi, Colleen. It's been an amazing experience to do that. They sent me to China for a week. And something that we take for granted is eating tacos. Right? This past weekend, when we were open, we had a 2-year-old eat a taco in our restaurant. Didn't think anything of it. So here I am in front of thousands of people telling them I'm going to demo a taco, and they're looking at me like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, well, it's a tortilla, and they're like, what do you mean? Rewind a touch. I almost got detained in China twice. The first time is because I brought a cast iron tortilla press, and they thought it was a bomb. Because they had never seen one before. And then while I'm there, I'm telling them that I'm going to cook a mole sauce, right? everybody looking around like, oh, I know what a mole is. So the day of the demo, they're scrambling and they're like, chef, we don't know if we can find this. And I was like, oh, I don't need anything. I have it. They're like, well, what are you cooking? And I was like, well, the fish that you're providing, but you want this, the mole. And I was like, oh no, I brought it. And they're like, you brought it? I was like, what are you talking about? Well, they showed me a picture. They were trying to source me a mole rat. And they thought I was gonna butcher a mole rat in front of them and serve it to them. And they were just like, okay, this is something every day. If somebody told us that, I'd be like, yeah, we're not doing that. So just like that cultural difference, and being in China, you saw a very traditional meal, like Kristina mentioned, hot pot. I had this same meal like 5 times because that's what you did. And they told me, well, this person does this better than this one. But it was the same meal 5 times, and it was this is our tradition. So when I look at something like that, I think of people who preserve tradition and people who want to innovate, and we're just trying to be on the innovative side of everything.
Kristina, Camille, something to add to that?
Well said.
Very well said, chef. Well, I mean, we do pride ourselves on being an authentic Szechuan restaurant, both of them, and we will get foreign nationals come in and they'll tell me, hey, who do you have in your kitchen? Do you have an Asian person? Or do you have a Chinese person cooking? I don't know. This doesn't taste authentic to me, and it leaves me very stumped. But at the same time, I take the approach in thinking, okay, you're right. I mean, you're basically telling me your grandma's spaghetti is better than my grandma's spaghetti. I mean, they're both authentic. It's fantastic, but you just have a slight variance. That doesn't make it less authentic. But I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. So, but we take a lot of pride in putting out what we feel is as true to authentic as can be through the culinary techniques, through the ingredients that we choose to utilize, the ratios of different recipes and in the ingredients, and achieving the flavor profile. Like one of the most famous Szechuan profiles, there's mala, which means mouth-numbingly spicy. And it's not because it's so spicy that it numbs your mouth. It's literally because of the use of the Szechuan peppercorn that causes a numbing sensation on the palate. And that we will find those peppers pretty prominently sprinkled in throughout the menu, but we also have to balance that out because not everybody loves to have their face feel numb. And so, but that's where then the family style comes into play, and everybody gets to try a little bit of everything. 'Cause our food is assembled differently. It's all made in a wok and it's plated. You don't get a composed dish with your steak and your sides and so forth. It's everything comes into the middle, and if the protein is supposed to be the star, it's going to be protein dominant. If the vegetable is meant to be the star, it's going to be a plate of vegetables. And to generalize it.
Just add on to that Szechuan and the numbingness spice. So I'm very used to the Mexican spice of like right off the bat, your mouth is on fire, it's all around. So to experience that for the first time was definitely an experience, and it's exactly like you said. It is very different from what you see, and that technique is very authentic, or it is very traditional of Szechuan technique, right? So that was definitely an experience for me, and it was delicious, but very different from the Mexican spice that I'm used to.
I've had to let our guests know you're not having a reaction. This will go away in a few minutes. It's supposed to happen. This is normal.
Didn't it happen? It happened at James Beard, right? We had to get somebody sour cream on the fly. So.
But and then I asked, I was like, hey, are they okay? Are they enjoying themselves? I'm like, yes, they loved it. They had 2 servings of it. I'm like, okay.
You just gotta get used to it, and then you love it.
Get you some milk and some sour cream. It'll be good.
Whipped out the sour cream. I love that. What about you, Camille? How have you kind of dealt with that question of authenticity, or is that even something that you've dealt with at your restaurant and at Sorry?
Yeah, for sure. I think the question of authenticity is also, a difficult one to define what that means to each individual. I believe also that our recipes are authentic because they're the way that my dad made them. So we do try to hold true to those recipes. We haven't deviated very much. We've added a few items to our menu. But 2 years ago, when we opened our second concept, like Leo said, we're really trying to innovate food. We're really trying to make food that might have a little bit of my history, might have a little bit of of our tradition, but also be exposed to the nuances that are happening all over the world. Food is so exciting. I'm a foodie at heart. I'm not a chef, just in case y'all didn't know. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, but my parents started this restaurant such a long time ago, and I felt like it was such a gem that I needed to leave my profession and really see what I could do to introduce San Antonio to Filipino food if you haven't already tried it. But Filipino food, when we opened back in the 90s, may at this time may be challenged in its authenticity because, like Kristina said, the ingredients were not available here when we started. My dad also sourced Filipino ingredients from Houston or wherever he could find them to bring them to San Antonio so that we could cook our food. Cooking your own food when you have immigrated from a different country makes you feel more at home in such a foreign place. So it really is like inviting people to the table, sharing your love, making sure they're fed, making sure they are introduced to what you're providing for them. So in that way, like Leo says, this is from my heart. This is very authentic to me. So if you're challenging that, I don't really have much to say. Yes, there are different cuts available now. There are different ingredients available now. Now chefs there are people from my generation, Filipinos from my generation that are actually entering culinary school and learning French technique and infusing those techniques with the food that we've prepared. So it's just so interesting to me to be able to do those kinds of things. At our restaurant, we're not able to because I think in San Antonio, people are still finding out about Filipino food. So when they are looking for it, they want what's authentic, they want what's traditional, and when they come to Sari Sari Filipino Restaurant, Market, and Bakery, that's what they get. But when we tried to open our second concept, which was more of an innovative fusion approach, it was still very unknown. I think it's definitely more well-versed in other areas of the country where there are larger Asian populations. But here, I think Kristina's doing such a great job to introduce Szechuan culture and cuisine to San Antonio, and I think we're all here to follow suit. We're all here to explain who we are, where we came from, what our cuisine is like, and it's opening doors for the lesser-known Asian countries. But yeah, that's what I take on Filipino authenticity. We haven't changed our recipes, and we can't anymore because people are used to it. So anytime I try to do something like off the wall, like maybe we'll throw it on our food truck or at a pop-up or a special dinner. But when you come to Sari Sari, it's authentic and traditional.
And Monica, I mean, you had written about this idea, this theme, in how people write about food and how people study food, the scholarly aspect of it. What did you find with this idea of authenticity?
Yeah, I think authenticity, the way that everybody here is describing it is really the way that we should be thinking about authenticity, right? That authenticity can be a trap because it locks you into only one way of understanding cuisine or influences, and it's limiting, right? I mean, all of you have described, like, if you can only cook or be in one way because that's what's deemed by whoever as authentic, then where does that put the creativity on the part of the chef, on the cook, and the person who is making the food, whether it's in a restaurant or at home, right? And I think that when we consider authenticity, a lot of it has to do, I think a better way to think about authenticity is what are all of the different forces that had to come into play for this particular dish to exist at this particular moment in this particular city, right? And then that broadens how we understand authenticity, and we can kind of think about, kind of what is authentic to San Antonio at this moment in this time. Right. And then we see that tradition, right? We often talk about tradition as, something that is fixed and that never changes. And that's not true. Tradition evolves and changes too. And that's reflected in the foods that we eat and the meals that we share. and in just all of the creativity that can be found in these restaurants. And so, it's really awesome to kind of listen to folks who are actually doing this work and engaging with what it means to be authentic, and so I find it really inspiring. And I think it bodes well for, the sort of the scholarly side, and for, folks who are looking up reviews on Yelp and on Google reviews, right? They're like, well, what's the most authentic? But let's broaden that notion. Let's kind of explode that idea a little bit more. And then you see what kind of a beautiful, sort of diversity you do get from this, to sort of see what does it mean to be authentic now?
It's not a box, it's an ever-changing thing, right? Yeah. A quick reminder, if you guys have any questions, anything that's come up, we have a mic over here. Feel free to ask. But okay, so we've been talking about Asian American influence on South Texas. Monica, you just mentioned how this dish, how is it particular to San Antonio in this time? You all are either San Antonio natives or have been in San Antonio for a really long time. Camille, Leo, and I actually went to the same high school on the far west side, which is kind of funny. A little connection there. So how has living in San Antonio, being in San Antonio for so long, whether it's all your life or just for so many years, how has it influenced your restaurant and the type of the food that you've served in at the beginning and then looking to now?
So the food that's served in my restaurants they do lean on the more authentic and traditional side, I should say. But the connection that's made is, how do we present this? How do we describe this dish in a way that our community is going to receive it well? And so we have a dish called spicy savory pork intestines. It doesn't sound like the most delicious, but if you say tripas, everybody knows what it is, and right? And so it's about making that connection. And what was so Szechuan House opened in 2015, and we opened Dashi in 2021. And when we opened Dashi, it really allowed us to expand what we could do with Szechuan cuisine. And Szechuan as a gastronomic culinary style is actually very progressive, and it is fluid. It adapts to what new techniques are out there, what ingredients you can have available to you. Back in the day when I guess the origins of all these different styles, it was limited to what you have around you, like where the elevation is, where you're cooking, why you do things a certain way. Going back to who does it more authentic. I mean, sometimes there are reasons for why this adjustment was made. But Dashi has really allowed us to expand more and do a lot of unique collaboration dinners across all different chefs and restaurants throughout San Antonio. And what has really shocked me is that we've never had a terrible collaboration dinner. Every single collaboration dinner has come together, and the food, in a progression, it flows just fine. And it's a really beautiful thing. So I think that's where it's going. And you do see nuances from different regions in cuisines throughout. Not everything is so, put into a corner in one little box as authentic and traditional.
Absolutely. Camille, Leo, how has San Antonio kind of influenced you all?
I grew up here. I was born in Cali, but my mom immigrated to Texas, so I joined her shortly after birth. So I do call San Antonio home. I grew up here as like the only Filipino in my school, almost like through high school, all the way. But that made me feel like it does make me feel like this is home. So connecting to the community is really important to me. Since I grew up here, since I've been attending festivals or just wanting to connect to my culture and find more people like me, holler to my Filipino friends that came to support me. There's only a few, but we're out there, and it's great to see people coming together. And I like to be at the forefront of those gatherings because I think there's a lot to learn from each other. There's a lot to really even relate on growing up here. I had a lot of Hispanic friends, and I was cool with that. My last name is De Los Reyes. It was Valenzuela, so it was very confusing for me growing up, like being a brown, short, I don't know, whatever. But nobody knew what a Filipino was. So I felt like my whole life I've been kind of describing what that is and who I am. So I put myself out in the community to be a little bit louder about that. And food is such a great vessel to be able to explain those things and to be able to really feel that sense of community. So I use that platform to connect with our community and hopefully just, hear more stories, hear what the community wants, and be an advocate for those kinds of things. And yeah, I make slight adjustments to make our menu a little bit more approachable, but that's all.
For sure. I'm San Antonio to a fault. I'm Texas to a fault. Born and raised here. Lived in Houston for a little bit. Came back. I miss San Antonio. I love San Antonio. So whenever the ambassadorship came about, I really wanted to do it just because you hear all the time, well, Houston has this food scene, Austin has this food scene, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, well, why not San Antonio? Why not us? Like, we're not just tacos, right? We got our start with tacos, don't get me wrong. And the reason we got our start with tacos is because nobody trusted us. But what I had to do was serve you a taco in the land of tacos. They were like, oh, that's good. And then it was kind of like, like parent giving like your kid veggies, like, here, try this now. Try this dish now. And then people started to trust us. And when they come into our restaurant, 2019 was a really good year. 3 taco competitions in the city. We won all 3. Again, we're classified as a Mexican pop-up, but we weren't. But they walk in, they see the trophies, and the first thing, I'm going to get the tacos because that's familiar. And then the second time, they get the other set of tacos we have. And then after that, they start to come in and say, well, let me try the duck with the hibiscus mole. Let me try a chicken in Hong Kong waffle. And then it's like, yeah, I got you. Now it's starting to come through. So, I'm Texas smoke. I love a heavy smoke flavor. Shout out to my girlfriend. She loves Texas barbecue. She hates it. But that's where I'm at. And being able to travel through culinary over the last 8 years, whether it's personal or with a different group, has really opened my eyes to different cuisine. So when I was in China talking to Malaysia, their state flower is a hibiscus flower. And I was telling them that I was doing a hibiscus and pecan mole. And they're like, well, what other countries have something similar to where we can almost do like an exchange and say, Malaysia has this hibiscus flower, Jamaica for us. We have a hibiscus lemonade and in our mole. And how can we showcase what we do on our side that they never thought to do? And then vice versa. What's something that we have that they do something different with it? And just, I think that exchange of food really shows like what San Antonio is and what can be, and just to put us on like that global front of Houston, of Austin, of Dallas, because again, I know we can compete with them, but I'm biased, so.
Absolutely. And talking about San Antonio on a global front, I think San Antonio really has been at the forefront of the culinary scene. We've had James Beard Award nominees, Best Quality Daughter this time, Curry Boys. We've had appearances on Food Network. You guys have had appearances on Food Network, Cooking Channel. So San Antonio cuisine has really been elevated on a national stage. And I think AAPI restaurants have been at the forefront of that and are leading that way. How do you guys feel about this, and how does that highlight San Antonio and Asian American cuisine here on a national stage for you all?
Yeah, I know for a fact, like when Camille first cultivated the program for the passports for AAPI, I was like, oh, that's smart. Why have we never done this or anybody ever thought to put this collective together? So even for myself, it's a nice snapshot to see, well, who's here? Who do we need to check out? Who do we need to cross off? And then again, what Kristina does at her restaurants is amazing as well, kind of pushing that cuisine where, again, she's labeled as one of the most authentic restaurants in the city. You can go on Facebook right now and probably name me the most authentic Chinese or Asian restaurants, and them two are going to pop up. So what it does is it brings eyes and awareness to who we are and what we do. And then hopefully they'll just come 5 doors down to me and be like, oh, this is a little different, but it's still great. Like, kind of just to toot our own horns. We were just in New York last week. We did a dinner through Visit San Antonio. China Tejano. And they were kind of worried where Kristina and I really didn't talk about our menus, but we just were like, no, it's going to work. And it did. It flowed perfectly to where we had something a little different. They had something a little different. And then they were like, wow, the flavor combination really worked. And it was like, yeah, this is coming out of San Antonio and we're like 5 minutes from each other. Well, one of our restaurants, but we're like 5 minutes from each other. So again, something so close in proximity, but we're very different. And I think that's what, Camille's really done for the community is let people know, like, you probably didn't even know this restaurant existed. So not just in May, but just come out and support us June, July, August, September.
Camille, explain that restaurant passport. So you started that in 2022. It's on its third year, I believe, this year. Explain what it is for those of you that don't know, and explain what you're trying to get at with it.
Sure. So, like I said, I'm really trying to make the community know that there's AAPI restaurants out there. I was really happy that we got recognized, or that San Antonio made a proclamation, the mayor of San Antonio made a proclamation to recognize AAPI month. And from there, I was like, well, what's being done? Well, Tanya over here, she was like, what are you doing for AAPI? And I was like, oh, I haven't heard anything. Let me go ahead and start something. So I had this idea that I was going to ask all my restaurateur friends. Thankfully, I have a few, and they all so graciously agreed to join in this passport initiative that we created for the month of May to really highlight all the AAPI restaurant and AAPI-owned restaurants that are here in San Antonio, local restaurants with AAPI owners that have stories of immigration or growing up here that can tell you all about it when you go and visit their restaurants. So last year was just a difficult time and every year. This is a really difficult industry to be in. We're just so thankful that we get to serve the food that we do, and we don't have to serve chicken strips or hamburgers or pizzas to survive. So I do notice, during February, it's Black History Month, and there's so many programs going on to recognize all the wonderful efforts and successes that community has had. So what about us? So we created the passport. There's about 30 plus restaurants on there. Some of the restaurants have second locations or other branches, and it changes a little bit every year as to who is on there. But I basically reach out to all my friends and ask them if they would give a 10% discount to anyone that came out to visit the restaurant throughout the month of May. All you have to do is tag us, our restaurants, and tag SATXAAPI, which is an Instagram page where you can find this passport. And all month long, just go and visit, meet the owners, invite your friends. It's not really about the discount, but just really is just to see what's out there, to go discover something new. There's a few people that have really been tagging and really been getting out there, and I just love all the activity that we get to see on that page, and hopefully it continues to grow. Hopefully my friends will continue to support this endeavor, and hopefully we can also continue to create more events, more activities from this passport and celebration of AAPI.
What have you all seen from this passport program or the initiative at your restaurants during AAPI month, and then beyond that as well?
We definitely get people coming in, and they mention that they found us through the passport, and we were just like, "Hey, thank you, Camille, for doing this and putting it together." But I think overall, we are seeing more interest just because we have more access to communication, to YouTube, TikTok, all the above for what's out there. And what used to be very unfamiliar and difficult to approach is not so difficult anymore because you see it and people are curious about it. So it's pretty exciting times.
That idea of visibility, right?
Right. Just to add on to that, we're in our third year, and I don't know if it's happened to you guys yet, but in our restaurant, we've been having more calls for like catering and things like that. Different companies, bigger companies like Chase or whoever or Target are celebrating AAPI month. So they're reaching out to AAPI restaurants in town, like, hosting those events and bringing more awareness. So that's something that I've noticed this year. So I'm really grateful to at least have that, to hear that going on in our community.
And I think, Camille, like what you said, San Antonio had that proclamation for AAPI month. San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg is the first Asian American mayor. We have Peter Sakai and county commissioners. And so San Antonio really has been, I think, also as well at the forefront of highlighting Asian American culture, food, cuisine, dance. We recently had Asian Fest not too long ago. So this is something that is coming up and it's being highlighted more and more in San Antonio, right?
Definitely, yeah. We were a part of the Asian Festival a couple of weeks ago, and that is in like its 30th year running. And there's more and more just different festivals, activities, pop-ups, things like that happening all month long that it's just really wonderful to see happening, going on, just all of the awareness that's being spread. So I think it's working. I think our efforts are paying off. So thank you guys for wanting to learn more about our culture.
And kind of speaking about the trip that you guys took to New York, just this past week, you guys were just there. What do you see when you go to these places, different places, whether that's in the U.S. or whether that's around the country, and you highlight the food that you make here? Kind of like what you said, Leo, it's like dipping your toe in it, right? You're like, you have a gateway of trying to get people to try new foods that maybe they haven't tried or try a concept that maybe they haven't heard of. What has that been like spreading what we have here in San Antonio across the country, but then also across the world with what you guys have done with the City of Gastronomy?
Yeah, I know for me, it's been great to see like just everybody receptive with it, right? Like Kristina mentioned, like food is our love language. Everybody that we've had the privilege of serving, whether it's here or when I was in China, they were all receptive to food. And you don't always see that, whether it's at a local festival or in Austin or in another city. You always kind of have that apprehension. But what's been nice is that everywhere we've gone, they've been really just open-minded to trying it. I tell the taco story, and when I was trying to tell them how to eat a taco, like if I told y'all right now, I'm gonna hand you a taco with your eyes closed, could you eat it for $100? Everybody would probably say, sign me up. Watching them tilt their head and look at me, and it reminded me of like my puppy. And it was funny, and I wanted to record him, not as like anything malicious, but just to think like, wow, I mean, like, it's a taco. You grab it, you turn your head, you eat it. Like, and then it was kind of, Kristina last week was like, well, it's like a dumpling or even a lettuce wrap. And I was like, I should have made that connection with them because we had like 900 dumplings while I was there, and it was great. But it's just interesting to see like the cuisine and how we push forward and what we're doing. And at the dinner last week, we didn't have a complaint. And there was people who have had authentic Sichuan cuisine, and they were having their food, and they were like, we've never had this before. And it was like, aha, like it's not just what you talked about. It's not just what you perceive as authentic. This is her story, her team's story, their vision on a plate, and it's different, but it's still authentic. So it kind of all just ties back in, but it's been great to see everybody just receive our food and be happy for us to serve them.
What about you, Kristina? What have you seen?
Well, so Peking duck, I don't know if you've heard of the dish. Peking duck is served in a taco. Like the vessel, it's a round, thin, flour-based kind of circular tortilla-like thing, and you put the hoisin at the bottom if you want it, and then you put the duck, and then you're garnished with green onions and so forth, and you wrap it up and you eat it like a taco. That's what I was thinking about it. Just thinking, Chef Leo, I need to go have a conversation with the people that you were teaching how to eat tacos. But I think people are receptive, and that's exciting.
I think it's so interesting what you said, too. It's like, you have to explain maybe a lettuce wrap to somebody. You're going to put this, or for Peking duck, and you have to kind of do it with what people are familiar with or what people know, and kind of take that and adapt it. Or like, this is a soup dumpling, you got to take the soup out first and then not burn your mouth and eat the whole thing in one go, right? So it's like a learning curve as you go.
Well, I think the soft dumpling the dumpling's like a soft empanada, like the way that it's shaped and so forth. And then, of course, there's different ways. You can steam it, you can pan-sear it, achieving different textures. And so it's all very versatile. Just depends on perspective, right?
Absolutely. And it's like kind of we said earlier, every ethnicity, every cuisine has like that a tortilla or bing if it's Chinese, or naan if it's Indian, or, you know, it's like their own version of something. And so it's just finding that kind of like similarity between it. And then there's also like a taco. You have your protein, your veggie, your starch, your crunch, and that's maybe like a spring roll or a wrap or, you know, something like that. So it really does go across ethnicities, and it's not just within like Asian American culture. So that's something that we see very much so, I think, all across the board, right? So I think as we wrap up, do you guys have any final thoughts or anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to highlight about Asian American cuisine, about its place in San Antonio and South Texas beyond? Anything that you guys want to get to?
Well, I think that all of us here are we're all in a very special time where we have the opportunity to tell our stories and share the stories, like versus our parents, or ours who's started the market and her market, and my father with his market. They did it as a means of sustenance to provide for their families. I mean, of course, we're doing the same to provide for our families, but the story is deeper. We can actually share that story because we don't have the language barriers. Our parents afforded us the opportunities to be educated here and to understand the dynamics of what it's to be American and San Antonian, and that juxtapositions itself against what we might experience inside of our homes. And so as we become adults and we're owners and operators, all of those nuances, I think, are expressed through our businesses. And, you know, we appreciate, I think all of us appreciate people coming out to support us and to try our cuisines and to share their stories with us, and as they become our family through food.
Monica?
I would say that something that the panelists mentioned about food being a love language, I think food, as you've described it here, is also a form of storytelling and history making, right? You know, that your stories, you know, as part of, you know, your family, but it's also part of the larger kind of immigrant story, you know, and that it goes back many, you know, generations, you know, here in Texas, you know, in San Antonio. I think of the importance of food to carrying on that history, right? And it tells about change. It tells stories about interaction. It tells stories about, you know, sort of adaptation and survival and love too. And so, I mean, that was just something that really kind of struck me just in hearing you all this evening is how, you know, this is part of history, and that we can see history through the plate that you serve.
It goes beyond just what's on a menu, right? It's, like you said, it's geography, it's place, it's time, it's so many different things. And that's kind of what has been highlighted today. Leo, any other words?
No, I mean, this has been great. You know, 10 years ago, I started culinary school, and it was like my first quarter when it was over, and the paper I got to write was about James Beard. So to be able to cook there, kind of like a 10-year anniversary, is pretty cool. Last year, I was invited to be one of the chefs who cooked and served food on a Tex-Mex panel. So it's kind of weird if I were to tell you, you know, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, even 10 years ago when I started, would I be in this position? So I don't take this lightly. I think it's a great honor to be sitting here next to these two women who are amazing in their business, amazing people, and then obviously with Dr. and Marian mediating. It's very surreal to even be here because it just doesn't feel real at times. My great aunt owned 5 or 6 American-style Chinese restaurants in the city, and she was amazing at doing that and what she did and how she did it. And just, I never thought I was going to be in this position to kind of take over and run with this torch, because I realized how sacred it is. So when you are eating, whether it's at our restaurant or any other restaurant that's not familiar to you, I would just ask that you go in with that mindset of this is going to be an experience, right? And again, let's use Bill Miller's, right? There's certain things on Bill Miller's that I absolutely despise, and there's some things that I'll grab a drive-through in, like their sweet tea. But outside of that, you know, it's a thing. You understand, and you have people like my dad is here. He eats Whataburger twice a day, right? And that you hear him laughing because it's true. And that's what he loves. But then I don't really care for Whataburger. So can I sit here and say, well, Whataburger is the worst thing on the planet? And you can't, because people have different taste buds. So if you're looking for something different, if you're looking for something unique, if you're looking for a true experience, not only our restaurants, but a lot of the restaurants are offering that. And at a time where a lot of us are closing, a lot of us don't know if we're going to make it to the next week, the next month, we ask for your support. Yes, I understand it's expensive eating out. We only ate out on special occasions. Maybe the world needs to go back to that, right? To where you celebrate those moments. But when you go out and eat, I promise you, we're not sitting here on billions and millions of dollars. We're trying to make sure that our team has their payroll, that our invoices are being paid, and that we have enough money to keep doing what we love the next day. So again, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I have to follow that. Can I just say everything he said? Oh my goodness. I'm also just honored to be here sitting on this panel. I never thought I would be on a panel. So I'm really, really glad y'all asked me to come, especially since I'm not a chef, but I do a lot of work, so I'm gonna take it. I'll sit here. Thank you for allowing me to share our story. Thank you for coming to our restaurant. Thank you for coming tomorrow. We would definitely love to see all your faces and meet all of you. It's such a special thing to grow up in San Antonio and to be a part of this community. I'm extremely thankful for my restaurant friends, because without this new generation of restaurateurs, I would have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not from this world. I only grew up on it. I call it slave labor, but in the Philippines, it's just helping your mom and dad and respect, right? So we try to definitely hold on to those things that we've learned from our parents, definitely uphold those standards, those traditions in our businesses. We run them with love, like Leo said. We really try to take care of our people and try to take care of our customers as well. It's the number one, thing on our hearts and our minds. So we really do appreciate your patronage. Check out the passport if you haven't already, and support AAPI all month long. And thank you so much.
In
TBR.
that spirit, just to end out the panel, what is the favorite thing that you all have on either your menu or an Asian American dish that maybe people haven't heard of? Just to bring a little bit more love to it, what is your favorite dish? So we'll start with you, Camille.
I want to pick dishes off of each other's menus.
Whatever you guys want. Or highlight a dish that you feel
fans
that you
of
love.
Everybody's dish. Okay, from my restaurant. No, I don't want to start there. I'm going to start with Kristina's restaurant. I love her Don Po pork belly. I love the garlic fried green beans. Oh my gosh, my go-to, my salt and pepper fish. I get the same thing every time. Leo, oh my gosh, everything that he brings to the festivals is absolutely amazing. His team is top notch. I'm so jealous. But everything at his restaurant is delicious. I love the waffle. I love the skewers. Super innovative, super great. When you come to my restaurant, our most popular dish is probably like our 5-pound pork hock. Something my dad developed. It's usually called a crispy pata. It usually comes with like all the knuckles and stuff like that. But back in the day, that was not available. So we went up like to the big meatier part of the pig. So we call it Texas size. So it's definitely something shareable. It has like really crispy pork skin on the outside and tender, juicy meat on the inside. You can bring the bone home to your dog. But, it's like a lot of good fun. I've heard a lot of people like bring it home, chop it up, and put it in a taco the next day. So super versatile. So come try our crispy pata. It's super delicious.
Kristina?
And I can't follow that. Jeez. Well, the Don is super popular at Setsuan House. That is what was featured on diners, drive-ins, and dives. But for me, spicy, savory, anything is going to be right up my alley. So the fish or the shrimp or the chicken, if that's your thing. And we're actually going to bring 2 of the dishes that we made for the James Beard dinner or the house over to dashi. And that's going to be the guai wei beef tenderloin, as well as the crispy garlic lamb chops. Those were pretty through the roof, and so we'll be introducing those very soon to y'all.
Something to look forward to. What about you, Leo?
The fan favorites of our menu, Korean fried cauliflower. So it's a gochujang glaze. Chef Kendra came up with that. It's tossed in a quick dredge, lightly fried, sauce in this beautiful sweet and spicy red glaze, topped with micro carrots. So it just kind of ties in that whole theme. It's vegetarian friendly. Yeah, I know. We got a few of those, trust me. One of my favorite things to plate is a Mexican-style street corn. It does not imagine the way you think a street corn does. It's one of my favorite things. And entree-wise, big red and barbacoa if you're feeling adventurous. Our pan-seared duck and hibiscus and pecan mole is one of my fan favorites. And
all of your menu is gluten-free too, right?
Yeah, and everything right now. So my little sister's celiac. So we try to make sure, like, we're trying to change the perception on that as well, right? It's a big thing of, well, it tastes like cardboard or it doesn't have flavor and everything, so on and so on and so forth. And I'm like, cool, what do you do for a living? I'm an accountant. All right, I'm not going to tell you about accounting, right? But let me tell you about food, because it's more than just, like, we threw it together. My little sister, again, is celiac. I have a wheat sensitivity. So growing up Asian and not having access to soy sauce or some of the marinades, we had to get creative and figure out how do we do it. Luckily, there's tamari. So we've been able to serve dishes that don't need gluten, right? If you eat and you feel sleepy, you feel bloated, it's probably the gluten, because everything is highly processed. Now, don't get me wrong, go eat fried chicken on Sundays, but come and see me and I'll make sure that we take care of you throughout the week, and you'll see that it's real food. It's real food. There's nothing processed. There's nothing overly done. We're just serving you something delicious. So the duck, the chicken and Hong Kong waffle, and big red and barbacoa, definitely our entrees of choice.
Monica, what's been a dish that you've had at any restaurant, Asian American restaurant, that you've loved or that is your favorite?
Yeah, well, gosh, so I'm new to San Antonio, so I want to plead the fifth, but I want
She's a Houston transplant.
Yeah, so I would like one of everything that was mentioned.
There you go.
Here,
now you have things to try.
Yes, exactly. So I have a feeling that I'm going to find some new favorites here in San Antonio. So.
And you all can try those as well. Well, that wraps up our panel. I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists, starting with Dr. Monica Perales, Chef Leo Davila, Kristina Zhao, and then Camille Reyes. Thank you guys so much for being on our panel. Thank you also to our sponsors, Frost and HEB, and also the City of San Antonio World Heritage Office for putting together this wonderful, wonderful event. Look out for more in the future. There is more coming up. This is just the beginning of the second series, so make sure you tune out. I hear that it's going to be barbecue, beer, and Silk Road and near the medical district. So you have that to look forward to. So thank you all so much for coming out. One last thing, one final thing. It's actually Chef Leo's birthday today. And he chose to spend it here with us at Texas Public Radio. We're very thankful. So if we could round it out with a little happy birthday just to end the night. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Leo. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you all so much for coming out and spending your evening with Texas Public Radio. Again, check out Ming's Things outside if you have not, and have a wonderful, wonderful night. We hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.